Hello, my name is Eric Lanchus, and today we're going to be talking about the on-page factors for 2016. It's going to be kind of a recap because there are new things, but it's a lot of the things that kind of just move on from 2015 and 2016. So I'm going to go over what's changed, what's not, and just keep you up to date, right? So here's what you absolutely need to know. So when we're talking about words, the content, multimedia, I'm going to go over some on-page structure, and we're going to talk about the theme, the server, and some of your code. The reason we're doing this is because I'm going to be focusing exclusively on pages that rank. So we're not going to be talking about pages that don't get penalized, because there's a big difference. Even though it's a small nuance, you could, if you have a page that only has 100 words and no original images, and just that might just qualify as thin content. So we're not going to be talking about thin content. We're not going to be talking about you need this ratio of original content to duplicate content. We're not going to be talking about that. We're just going to be talking about pages that rank, so pages that you want to create. The whole pages that don't get penalized, that's for a whole other video. So let's jump right into it. 2016 fundamentals, if you only have 5 seconds. So if you just need to remember the basics, this is what you want to remember. So you want the keyword in the title. Most important thing, just you want the keyword in the title. The next most important thing is that your H1 tag should either be related to the keyword, or it can be the keyword that you want to go for, as long as you make it natural. So it could be either or. If you have a synchronous keyword to H1, such as WordPress. WordPress loves to use the exact same H1 as your title. So if it's synchronous, then you will want to include the keyword because you want the title to have your keyword. If it's asynchronous, meaning that you have a different title to your H1, then the H1 doesn't need to be the exact title. In fact, it could be related and you'll do just fine. So that's the second part. The next thing is you want to mention the exact keyword at least once in the article. But you know what? Mentioning it only once is perfectly fine. You don't need to mention it 5-6 times. Only having it once often, it's kind of like the recipe these days. That really is. Most of the time it's just one time and you have variations of it. The next thing is you want to have high quality, relevant links that are critical to, you want to link to high quality stuff, and you want to basically have supplemental content, meaning that when you are linking to things, the links need to be relevant. So if you're writing about fishing, you want to link to other fishing sites or other fishing documents. If you link to high quality fishing documents, you will rank higher. If you link to low quality fishing documents, you will rank lower. So let me give you a perfect example on this. So if you're writing about fishing and you link to a squeeze page for a fishing affiliate, that will be considered a low quality page that you're linking to. So when Google scans it, they'll scan that and they'll scan the next page and they'll see like, okay, you're linking to a lower quality page. However, if you link to a high quality resource on fishing, then your ranking will actually go up. So it's that distinction that Google looks at what you're linking to, and depending on what you link to within that article, it will impact the ranking of that article. Finally, the next thing you want to know is you want to name your images, your original images, with the appropriate keywords in the file name. So if you are talking about fishing, I would have fishing-pole.jpg. Those are really the fundamentals that you need to remember. So really quickly, title, you want to have it in there. The H1 doesn't need to, but you can. Number 3, you want to mention a keyword at least once. We all know that. Number 4, where you link to and what you reference is actually very important. And number 5, the images, you just want to have file name. So that's it. We're done. Nah, there is a bit more to it. So let's dive into a bit more details. So in terms of page content, this is what I found to work the best, and a lot of people are coming out with these mass analysis of like, oh yeah, we've looked at all these pages, and this is what they always find, right? So 1,200 to 3,000 words is really what is ranking these days. Google's rewarding lots of content. It's actually really difficult to rank something with like only 650 words. Like, just if it's a really competitive term, you're just so much better off ranking with a lot more words. It's just much easier. The next thing is 3 to 12 original images. So original images, I've been saying this for the past 3 years now, and it really just continues. The trend continues where original images, especially if you name them properly, are really helping ranking. You want to have one H1 title, as I just mentioned, covered. Won't go over that again. The next thing is subheadlines. So subheadlines, you want to have 4 to 12, depending on how long your content is and how many subheadlines you're using. So here's what I mean by that. In terms of subheadlines, they are used to break up the text, because if you look on the right hand side, you could see that the text is quite broken up. There isn't one big block of text. One of the things that Google hates the most is one big giant block of text. That's just not good for readers, and Google just doesn't seem to rank those very well. So big blocks of text we want to absolutely avoid, and you want to break them up with many subheadlines, and even H3, so subheadlines. The next thing, as I mentioned in the previous step, is you want to have relevant internal links, so 4 to 12, and at least one relevant external link. The next thing is you want to have a table of content, if possible. Sometimes this doesn't apply, sometimes it doesn't. Does. If you have pagination, that could be a replacement for a table of content, or it could kind of go together. And finally, one thing I've just found that just seems to help is bullet lists. And they're so easy to include. So I like putting in a bullet list. For some reason, it just seems to help the pages that I make. So here are some boosters. These are things that are not necessarily at the core, but they do help, and they help indirectly. So meta description is not a direct booster, but it is an indirect one. Rich snippets, breadcrumbs, video sitemap, and table of content. And now let me explain what I mean. All these things will impact your click-through ratio. All these things will impact your listing. So depending on if you have these things, your listing will look different to Google, meaning that you're going to get more clicks when searchers go through the top 10 listings, and the more clicks and the higher click-through rate you have, the higher you will rank. So these are all kind of like the indirect things that you want to absolutely get right in order to rank higher. So meta description. This is what the description is about your page. Now I've tested to put a keyword inside there and then not have a keyword inside, and I didn't see any rankings change. However, the meta description does seem to impact the meta description does impact the click-through rate. So if you put something really attractive, people that are reading the meta description will click on it and then kind of go and browse your site. So that's good. You're going to increase your click-through rate. Same thing with rich snippets. If you're using rich snippets and you can get some additional things like the star or the reviews, that will increase click-through rate, which will therefore increase your rankings. Next thing is breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs is kind of like the navigation at the top of your page, and that creates the effect. I have an arrow pointing to the effect that it does, and if you look at the first result, because they have breadcrumbs, it puts it nicely. So it doesn't just put the URL, but it'll put like shop.lenovo.com, home, laptops, ThinkPad, T-Series. So it breaks down the breadcrumbs, so when people see that, they are more likely to click because it just looks nicer, I guess, and it really shows that you're at the right place. So breadcrumbs help a lot. If you are hosting a lot of videos, this is really finicky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but a video sitemap will allow you to have a thumbnail sometimes of the video, and that, if you could get a thumbnail of the video, increases click-through rate tremendously. The next and final thing is table of content. Again, so the table of content, what that does is you can see at the bottom you have it shows you the categories of like the table of content. So that also increases click-through rate, because instead of just having a normal listing, now you have the pieces of that table of content. So you have like what are the most common, how to identify panda and penguin, troubleshooting, and so forth. So all these things impact your rankings, and these are easy on-page things you can. However, if you change it and then you monitor the results for a little while, they're not going to change it directly. They're only going to change it because it impacts the click-through rate. Okay, here are the secondary boosters. So the secondary boosters, these are things that I always use once the page has been ranking for a while. So these are things that you don't do right off the bat, but maybe maybe a week later. The next thing is going to be the ride the wave technique. This is an on-page booster that I always use, and what I do is I go to Webmaster Tools and I look at the incoming searches and I add those words to the page that I'm trying to rank. So you could actually filter inside of Webmaster Tools. You could filter by page, and then you look at the incoming searches for that page. So if there's words that you haven't put, you put those, and then you will end up increasing your ranking for that, increasing your click-through rate. So that, if you want the whole video, there's a whole other video on riding the wave that's explained step by step, but I always do that as a secondary booster. The next thing is if possible, to gradually add comments to the page as time goes by. This increases freshness, it increases the content. It actually, when you have comments, it encourages other people to leave comments and for the discussion to kind of progress. This is really one of the best ways that I found to kind of keep pages ranking long term. So that's going to be my secondary. The tertiary boosters are going to be running your content through Grammarly. So you increase the spelling score and you increase your spelling score, because Google is a robot and they do use a grammar bot to measure and give you a score. So the solution to that is actually to use another grammar bot and make that bot equal the Google bot. So you get the best, you get a robot telling you what the other robot is looking for. So I strongly encourage you, I'm not getting anything for recommending them, but if you do care about the content and you want a robot to think it's awesome, then use it. The next thing I also use is end topic to increase relevance. Now, there are two ways of increasing relevance in terms of putting the right LSI keywords. One, you could make a big list. You could know you just know all the words that are on the topic, on the keyword that you're trying to rank. Sometimes you could look at the suggestions at the bottom of a Google page, and you could even use Google Trends. There are many ways of getting suggestions for words that are related on the topic, but if you want a quick no-brainer way of just seeing that you're making sure you're covering all the words, you could use end topic, and you go into the writer. I think it costs $10, and then they're going to give you all the words that should be there for whatever keyword you're trying to rank. So for instance, let's go back to our fishing pole. If I type in fishing pole, it's going to tell me all the words that are expected on that topic. So it'll be oh, you should have a lake, you should have fish, you should have all these things, and that just makes it really easy. Okay, so here are some things that don't seem to matter. So these are things that you might be doing that I've tested, and it really doesn't make your rankings go up, doesn't make them go down. So adding YouTube video embeds. I tested this and I was like, cool, let's have one. Let's take it off, have it in, take it off, have it in. Let's add two, take it off, have it in. Nothing. I didn't see any change. Adding a PDF version of my content, so kind of linking a PDF version. I was like, oh yeah, it's for sure going to be good, right? So I started doing that on a few pages, and I left it like that for a month. Nothing happened. Meta keywords, obviously we know that's deprecated. There's a lot of other meta tags that don't appear in the Google listings that just don't seem to do much. So I'm including meta keywords, but also know that there's other abstract meta tags that they don't seem to do anything. Having social buttons or not having social buttons, whether they're present on the page or not, it doesn't really seem to do anything. And funny enough, I'm actually working on an experiment where I don't have any social buttons on my page, and it's been the most shared page ever via social networks and all that. So for some reason, social buttons, they don't really seem to do that much. And having a pop-up, that's also another interesting thing, where you'd figure that having a pop-up would make your score kind of tank. It'd be a horrible experience and all that. But it turns out having a pop-up didn't really seem to impact the rankings. I've tested with pop-up, without pop-up on hundreds of pages, and that just seems to be negligible. So if there is anything that goes down, it doesn't really seem to do anything. In fact, I've had weird experiments where I've had a pop-up and my rankings went up. And the theory behind that, the idea, is that because there's a pop-up, people stay on the site longer. So, and therefore my user experience is better, and therefore that's why the traffic goes up. I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but pop-ups don't really seem to have anything negative. having one pop up, like don't have 5, 6 where you gotta start closing a site and all that. Just like one. What you want to avoid though, and like I mentioned in the beginning, we're not doing a thing on penalties, but what you do want to avoid is you want to avoid linking to low quality pages. Like I mentioned, if you're linking to a squeeze page, that's okay, but you got to keep in mind that Google doesn't necessarily like that. So sometimes in order to make money, we got to do things like, reduce the rankings a bit, but it's worth it. The other thing is having 3 or more opt-ins. So if you have like opt-in forms all over the place, that's actually going to reduce your score. So I've tested this where I have Aweber forms all over. I'm like, let's just make sure this person subscribes. So you're like spamming opt-in forms, and that ends up not helping. Having excessive ads. I can't go into detail about all the bad ad placements and what is excessive versus not. I definitely do that in the other videos, but as long as you have a decent amount more content than ads, I'd say usually max 3 ads. You want to have the standard ad placements. What you want to avoid is definitely the ad between your H1 and the content. That's one of the major penalty areas, and you may want to make sure you don't have a giant ad right at the top. Usually, these days I'm going through a lot of websites, and most people don't have this issue. The next thing is obviously you want to avoid over optimization. So if you're keyword stuffing, if you're over bolding all your text, if you're over italicizing all your text, you want to avoid that. But once again, I'm not diving into detail on this video. And you want to avoid not only duplicate content, but very similar content. So if you're essentially just rewriting an article, Google finds the similarities and they tend not to rank that very well. So rewriting articles and duplicate content is stuff that you definitely want to avoid. Okay, so now let's move on to structure, because this is all about on-page, and I'm going to go through structure lightning quickly. That doesn't even make sense. Really fast. So here's what you need to know. Well, relevant URL permalink names, they actually do help. So for instance, if you want to rank for Labrador, you want to have /Labrador in your permalink. That actually is always helped, and it keeps on helping. You want to have a relevant domain name if possible. So a long time ago, we had the EMD update. So the EMD update essentially, if you had an exact match domain, you were getting too much of a boost. Now they've definitely toned it back, but you're still getting a somewhat of a boost. So if possible, and you do have a relevant domain name, that does still help. Placed in a relevant category. So this is kind of something I don't really talk about too much, but this does impact it, where it's when you're building your site, if you put your article or your content inside a relevant category. You remember when we were talking about breadcrumbs? Google does see the category that things are in. So it's kind of like the silo concept. So if you have all your dogs, like Labrador, Golden Retriever, Bernese Mountain Dog, and all that inside breeds, Google knows that you are in a relevant category, and therefore these things will rank a bit higher. So you want to silo it and basically link it in the proper way. So this kind of explains exactly what I'm talking about, where if you have a category that's called dogs or breeds, then you want to have all the subcategories underneath this. So if you have something that said dog toys, then you would have all these types of dog toys underneath. The structure is actually really simple. Just have a category and just put everything underneath that category. And then from Golden Retriever, you could even link out to subsections of that Golden Retriever. So if you had Golden Retrievers for sale, Golden Retrievers training, Golden Retriever toys, and all that, then you would link out here to for sale, training, toys, and so forth. And that's essentially the best rankings practice. The last, and this could be really important, is country-specific TLD. So if you're going for United States or just international, you want to have a .com, .net, .org. But if you're going for country-specific, try to get the TLD for that, because it gives you a huge ranking boost. So for instance, you would have a .ca for Canada. Okay, server and programmer stuff. That will affect your ranking. I didn't really know how to name this category, but you'll get the point. Page load speed, less than 3 seconds. So that is the number that I've, through experience, figured out that if you have less than 3 seconds, usually you're perfectly fine. If you start getting to 4 to 6 seconds, especially I've had sites where the page load speed was 7 seconds. That definitely starts impacting everything, and the house starts crumbling down because your user experience goes to shit, because people are just tired and don't want to load that page, and you go back to Google, and the Google bot doesn't crawl as well, and on top of that, you're just dinged for low load speed, so you actually just lose ranking. So if you have a slow server, there's a lot of things. It's like the domino effect. There's a lot of things that just go bad with that. The next thing, and I've been saying this for years, and Google's even confirmed it, the HTTPS SSL protocol, I think in 2013 I made a video on this. That's a ranking factor. It doesn't do the biggest thing in the world, but in some cases it actually does have, in the examples that I had when I discovered it, it actually made a huge difference. But recently, it just doesn't seem to have had the same effect. I don't know why, but I would still include it if you're working on a very serious site. Next thing is uptime. Now, I've been able to measure this through downtime recently. I've realized that when your servers go down for whatever reason, Google doesn't care, but if your server goes down for a day because of a hurricane or because of whatever, then when your server does come back, your rankings, even though everything is exactly the same, it does hurt your rankings. So Google definitely does measure this, and you do not go back to exactly where you were. So you might go back to 95% of where you were. So this could be huge and devastating if you have a giant site. And I think it just takes time for Google to start trusting your site again. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but definitely every single time that I've had servers or sites go down, whenever they come back up, they don't come back up as strong as they were. It takes a little while. So that's definitely a ranking factor. The next thing is going to be design and code. So ideally, you want a unique theme. So you want your theme to be responsive. That's going to be kind of a coding thing. But you want to have a unique theme. If you use the same theme as everyone else, apparently this does not rank as well. And I've done tests on this where I took a template. So essentially, I took a pre-made website, a template on a certain subject, and I put a ton of content on it, right? I made all the content unique, and it just didn't rank as well. And when I changed the entire theme, then magically things just started moving and things started ranking better. So I'm going to say that if you have a unique the same theme as everyone else, it doesn't mean you can't rank. It's just that you seem to get more rewards when you have a unique theme and no one else has it. On the other hand, however, if you have a theme that not many people use, that seems to be okay as well. I don't know why, but I buy themes from Theme Forest, I modify them, and that seems to be my best bet to get web development out for inexpensive. Okay, clean code and CSS. So it needs to pass W3 test. This we've been saying for a long time. And mobile-friendly pages. Now this is obviously the 2016, 2017 trend. You definitely need mobile-friendly pages. You need go do the Google mobile test if you have any doubts about that. Because what I found is if it's not mobile-friendly, it doesn't affect. Here's the thing, actually. If it's not mobile-friendly, it doesn't seem to affect the desktop version. The desktop version, apparently, it just really does seem to be kind of independent. I have customers that have sites that are not mobile friendly, and their traffic seems to have stayed the same. It doesn't seem to have an impact. However, for the mobile traffic, it definitely does. So this is a big glaring thing where if your site is not mobile friendly, you're not getting much mobile traffic, and therefore that could be 50% of your traffic, honestly. So if you have any questions, let me know. Contact me in the support area, and I'll be happy to answer you. If you have any additions, anything you found, then ask me there too. So my name is Eric Lanches, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.